This episode is proudly supported by Fine Food Australia. It's only a few weeks until Fine Food Australia, the country's leading trade event for food service and hospitality, is back on in Sydney. As a professional in the food industry, you know the importance of staying ahead, discovering new trends, connecting with suppliers, and finding the inspiration to move your business forward. For over 40 years, Fine Food Australia has been the ultimate destination for chefs, restaurateurs, cafe owners, food retailers, and distributors alike. With over 900 exhibitors across 12 product categories, featuring both local and global brands, Fine Food Australia is where you'll find what's next, what's new, and what's driving the food industry forward. Make sure you register online before the 8th of September to secure free trade entry, so you don't have to pay $45 at the door. Don't miss Fine Food Australia on from the 8th to the 11th of September at ICC Sydney Darling Harbour. For more information, go to www.finefoodaustralia.com.au.
I'd like to acknowledge Australia's First Nation people as the traditional custodians of the land, and for this episode in particular, the Corrina people. I pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging.
The great thing about this region is that there's always been some pretty interesting characters who are super blue sky type crazy thinkers. It kind of is a bit of a breeding ground for a little bit of irreverence. It's a pretty cool place to live. This is Over a Glass. I'm Shanteh Wale.
Corrina Wright is the winemaker and face of Oliver's Taranga in McLaren Vale. She is a sixth-generation farmer whose passion infuses everything she touches. Immensely respected and a true voice for change, I'm thrilled to have finally bribed, coerced and pleaded my way into getting her on the show. Good morning, Corrina. Thanks for joining me.
Good morning, Shanteh. Very excited to be here.
Oh, well, I'm thrilled to have you on. Our paths have taken us around the place, but never actually brought us together. So I'm thrilled to just have you for 5 seconds to hear a little bit about your life.
No, it's super exciting. Yeah, we have, haven't we? I mean, we haven't managed to sort of connect judging at wine shows or properly connect. But I've watched your career with pleasure.
Thank you. It's fun. It's so nice to talk to you. And I mean, I absolutely adore what you do. I love seeing when your wine package arrives and I'm like, oh yes, I'm in for such a treat. And to see the growth, because there's always happens to be a new bottling of something, a new release, and I just can't wait to open it because I don't know what I'm going to get, which is always really exciting.
Yeah, no, I tend to throw some wild cards out at you every now and then.
That's good. We got to keep it fresh. I mean, I looked at your website because I tend to do that just to have a little gander. And then I was like, oh my God, there's T-shirts, there's olive oil, there's gin, there's magnums, you can go to McLaren Vale, go to your cellar door and never leave, not even need to see anything else.
That actually sometimes happens with some customers and they bemoan it a little bit. But yes, it's true. We love a bit of merch. I
think that's great because I think that, then there's something for everyone there. You go to these cellar doors. You might be somebody that's been dragged along, but then you can find your own little, groovy number that you love. I just think that's really, really smart, but also really cool. Now, your history and your family's history goes way back. So let's take us back to kind of William and Elizabeth Oliver and tell us about kind of your family history in the industry.
Yeah, for sure. So, William and Elizabeth immigrated from, the bustling wine-growing region of Scotland to move to McLaren Vale. And they bought this property sort of sight unseen, and we are still here today. So they sort of arrived in 1839, and we've been here ever since. So 6 generations later.
It's pretty crazy to say. I mean, it rolls off the tongue because you must say it every day. But when you think back, to a very different time, when you look at kind of your 180 plus year old property, can you transport yourself back to the time of when they were living and how different it must have looked?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I would give anything to be able to go back in time. I've tried to pester who do you think you are to have us on, do a wine industry version and take us back to Scotland and learn more about, what they came from and a bit more about what they came to. But, it is incredible when you think about it. They came out here, we haven't been able to work out where they got their money from, etc., where they got their skills from. But, they came here, there was no water, they had to dig a well, there was no, infrastructure, they built houses, they had to clear the land, they planted, vines, but also fruit trees and cropping, and they had horses and cattle and, even back then, judged wine at the agricultural shows in the 1850s, and meanwhile, Elizabeth is busy having 10 children in amongst all of this. And, the mind boggles. Can't imagine.
My God. I can't even. I was just thinking as you were talking about that, like they were doing it, but they were doing it in long skirts and, those corset looking kind of strange undergarments. It's like, they didn't have sprinklers and pools to cool themselves off in, and 10 kids. I mean, I can't.
No. And, dreadful tragedy as well. I mean, she lost three of the children died relatively young, 2 within, a couple of days of each other from, we believe, diphtheria, the weather. I mean, what a difference in weather, what a difference in, water access, what a difference in culture, I suppose. I mean, it was the early days of culture in McLaren Vale. But, the interaction with the Ghana people, all of it is mind-boggling.
Incredible.
But I do feel very thankful that they came.
Yes, indeed, because you're right. They could have ended up kind of anywhere else in the world. Now, Tell me, what kind of childhood did you have? I mean, I'm sure that, in your young early days when you were running around, you were kind of aware of this family lineage, but maybe it wasn't as meaningful as when you were, 10 running around. What was your childhood like?
Yeah, I mean, the farm, as I called it, was always here. We always had vines. We had sheep, cattle, pigs, cropping over the time, and had finished basically with table grapes, so sort of doing dried fruit as well. In my grandpa's time, so it was always here. And my dad was also working in the wine industry. He worked for Pyramima for a while, and then worked for K Brothers for a long time as well. So grew up around it, but I suppose, for me, the grass was always greener. When you grow up somewhere, you don't really see it for what it is. But when you look back on it with nostalgia and, how lucky you were really to have that space around you and, that access to the outdoors and growing things and understanding of seasons and, all of that sort of stuff.
It kind of gets its kind of claws into you, doesn't it? It's not until later you're like, wow, look at the lifestyle I had, and then realise that's exactly what you want for your own children or whatever it may be. But tell me a little bit, because your family were growers for such a long time, so you kind of saw the fruit go out. Tell me about your cousins, because you're now in business with them. Are these the kind of cousins that were kind of always around the house? You spent a lot of time with them. How was that kind of dynamic?
Yeah, so Bryony also grew up here in McLaren Vale, and she's only child, myself, and I'm 10 years older than her. And so her parents separated relatively early days, and so I tended to have quite a bit to do with her. I used to run her birthday parties for her at her dad's house and, take her shopping sometimes for her prom dresses and all of that sort of stuff. So we more have, I suppose, probably a bit more of a sister type relationship. And then the other part of our family business is down, we have a big amount of land down the southeast of South Australia in between Kingston and Lucindale, a place called Avenue Range, in which we do grow sheep and cattle mainly, but also some cropping. And so my other cousin Sam, who works within the business, and his brother Jared all grew up down that end of the country, but, we often spent time there. I used to do shearing, have to go down and work for shearings, and they're then another sort of 10 to 15 years younger than me as well. So I think the great thing about us all working together is, values-wise, we're all on the same page, which is amazing. But also we've got like quite different skill sets. So, Sam runs the finances of the whole sort of group, but he's also, a different generation. And so he's super helpful in the social media space as well, and talking to people of his age, I suppose, and, much more tech savvy and all the rest of it because he's grown up in that space. Bryony is now taking over the vineyards from her dad, Don, and has always been, incredible just getting things done within we wouldn't have been able to do what we've done without each other. And then me doing the winemaking and sort of being a bit of we joke about me being the lead singer and Bryony being the drummer of the band, and in which she's very happy to be in that space. So we've been so lucky that we all work together really well. And then Jared, he's down the southeast and he's running, learning to take over from his dad down there as well. So we're very lucky that we all get on and that we've all got different skill sets that really add to the business.
Yeah, that's very cool. Now, tell me a little bit about when you decided that, this is for you when you went off to do your Bachelor of Ag Science. Tell me about, was there a moment? Did you think of being something else when you were young? Where was the decision making?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, early days I thought I was going to be an air hostess. This is how old. In the olden days, I still say air hostess. But anyways, then I realised I get like dreadfully travel sick, and so that was a crap idea. Then I was going to be a lawyer and sort of going to specialise in agricultural law was what my plan was. And so I did commerce or enrolled in commerce law, but decided partway through that I didn't really want to wear a suit every day and finished the commerce and then took a year off and travelled and just did the, sort of backpacking Europe thing. And I think that was probably the moment because, like I said, you grow up somewhere and you just keep on thinking that the grass is greener, and then you actually go to the other places and you're like, oh, the grass isn't greener, it's just different. And what an opportunity I have to add, my generation's stamp, I suppose, onto the family business. Like all the other generations before us have all added something. And so this opportunity to be able to value add our grapes and not just sell our grapes 100%, but, put my grandpa's name on the label, things like that, became a lot more attractive. I worried for a while because girls don't go back onto the farm a little bit. There was a little bit of that. And I worried that maybe I wouldn't have a good palate. But, like you said, growing up everywhere and it gets into your bones and, what I knew from osmosis, from just being here, has really came to the fore once I started the winemaking degree.
You strike me as someone that's pretty fearless, but I think it's easy to make that kind of call when someone's achieved so much in their lifetime as you have. So it's interesting that you brought up the word worry, because I think that that's also part of our makeup as females, of thinking about all the possibilities and what could go wrong and looking at all the angles. So tell me a little bit about this first conversation of why don't we bottle our own fruit? I believe it was 1990, if I got that wrong.
1994, yeah. So Grandpa, I'd been speaking to my grandpa and my uncles, my Uncle Don, who still runs the vineyard, Bryony's dad. They were pretty keen, really. I think they were excited that they would have the opportunity, and they sort of enabled it to start off with, to be fair. They basically, we did a deal with Pam Dunsford. At that time, she was up at Chapel Hill, and we said, we'll give you some of our high-end fruit if you let Corrina hang out and, make some wine, and we'll give you half of it and you give us half of it, sort of thing. So it was very generous of them to do that at the time, and also very, very generous of Pam to have a, very green, Corrina just like peeking over her shoulder the whole time. And she was, is a formidable person. So she was quite terrifying to be around, but, learnt a lot from her, and that's sort of what kicked it off, I suppose. So very lucky to have had the family support, and, then just it's easier to take a leap, I suppose, when you've got that backbone. Yeah.
That's awesome to hear. I mean, in terms of, great growers are so integral for this whole industry, and probably don't get as much limelight shone on them. When your family producing this fruit, it was going out, it was being bought by, big names. Did you ever sit down as a family and drink some of those bottles and talk about kind of where that fruit was going and what it was making up? Was that part of the daily life?
Yeah, I think that came over the in the 90s probably that sort of started. I think before that time, wineries versus grape growers was a bit aggravated, to put it kindly, I suppose. The winemakers were sort of the famous ones, and, they were only paying, X amounts, and it was never enough, of course. And, there was and the growers were the farmers, and they were the meek and milds, and they weren't going out to fancy dinners and drinking fancy wines and stuff like that. So, but I think, that has, and it needed to change, has changed significantly now. But I think Grandpa, he'd go to bowls and, drink with his bowls mates and be very proud, showing off some of our, grapes that were in, wines that had our grapes in them. But I think he really wanted to, have something with his own name on it, and then be able to swap more, with all the other local winemakers as that sort of relationship developed. I think, it was a big leap for a farming family to then be, become wine connoisseurs, I suppose. And sort of took them on that journey towards the end of his life, and now we're immersed in it, I suppose.
Well, yep, I think
we're
you probably are.
At heart. We still grow for about 60% of our vineyard still goes to other wineries as grape growers. So, and we love supporting what they make with our grapes. So.
Yeah, and I love to see that you see winemakers bending over backwards now talking about the great fruit that comes in and what they can do to get their hands on it. And I love seeing that kind of script being flipped. Tell me, Did you remember that moment of, it was Shiraz, was it your first wine?
Yes. Yep.
Do you remember that moment when it was bottled and you got to share it with the family?
Yeah, I was
it
really
any good?
proud. Yeah, no, it is actually. We've still got some of it, so we've pulled it out every now and then. I mean, it was rustically labelled, to say the best, and under cork. So you've got some decent ones and some not. But I mean, it was just a thrill to be able to get it out there, and then people started buying it. We had a little tiny mailing list. I mean, you're talking about 200 dozen if that back then, and we had people who would buy it each year, and that was a bit of a thrill as well. And of course at that stage Grandpa didn't like spending more than $10 a bottle of wine or something, so it wasn't very expensive, so no wonder people bought it. But it did come off a pretty good fruit, and then it sort of just went from there and snowballed.
I mean, it is interesting because it doesn't, it's not like you go from being growers, like you said, and living quite a different lifestyle to automatically just having this amazing brand with these schmick labels and all of the things that you now have. It's a slow burn, but it is a big shift in that change of that direction that your whole family went on. And I kind of think of that first moment of your first bottling a bit like when some people write a book and they open their book for the first time. There's just so much work and risk that goes into it, and then it's in your hands and it's like, oh, okay, now what do we do? What do we do? We have to sell the thing.
I mean, that was you're spot on. I mean, that journey was crazy because we went from being farmers in which you got an X amount for your crop and it came in at this time, and then you didn't get anything else for the rest of the year, basically. And you kept on working with the seasons. You didn't do any marketing, you didn't have a website, you didn't do any branding, you didn't we you had staff who were, very hands-on. Being on a tractor was actual work. And then you had the start of a wine brand where, you have to sell, you have to brand something, you have to, God forbid, pay graphic designers to design something. So, of course, that didn't happen to start with. Working on a computer, that's not real work. So, and, the ability to have income coming all the time, but you have to do the outlay first. It was just a huge, huge, huge shift. Marketing. What's marketing?
Whoa! You're asking the wrong person.
So it was tough sometimes, I suppose, getting those two things right. The fact that we weren't sitting on a tractor doing something, but we were sitting on our computer, selling or whatever. Was tough for the older generations to get their heads around in the early days. That's for sure.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, just everything they know has been changed up. I mean, now if you go outside and get fresh air, people call it like a mental health, kind of exercise, let alone, before having a sit down for them used to be a bit of a mental health exercise. So it's just crazy. But I want to hear a little bit about UC Davis. So in 1997, tell me how that all happened.
I was very lucky, actually. I was working for, at that time, it was called South Corp, so the old Treasury Wine Estates, and I was working in grower liaison each vintage. So basically back then, all of the growers that were contracted to South Corp, I used to have to organise their intake and all of the sampling and their hand picking and their harvesting and their truck deliveries and all of that sort of stuff. And so I'd been working for them for Treasury for quite a while, and they at the time had a graduate program, and they were sort of saying once I'd finished, this is while I was studying as well, and so they were sort of saying, you can come on into our graduate program afterwards, and then the Adelaide Uni has a scholarship that you can get a position at a university overseas, and I thought I'll have a stab at seeing if I can get into UC Davis, and I got the scholarship from the university, and then was lucky enough to get a scholarship from Treasury Wine Estate, from South Corp at the time, to sort of pay for my living while I was over there. And then I stayed on for an extra year doing some work with Gallo and other places before I started the actual graduate program over here. So it was very, very, very lucky. And I absolutely loved UC Davis. It was so different, but awesome.
I imagine it must have been so different. I mean, you're coming from your experience, like you said, with South Corp Penfolds, you worked for some incredible companies that, had lots of levels and layers and detail. Going over to the States, did you find what were the differences? Were you finding that what you were studying was very similar to what you were kind of studying back here, or was it completely different?
It was relatively similar. I mean, I have to call out Roger Bolton, who was a professor at Davis, and actually was just here for the tech conference, so I got to catch up with him again after however many million years since I was at university. Awesome. But I kind of knocked on his door on my first day on campus and just said, hi, I'm Corrina from Australia, I'm here. And he very generously took because he's Australian, but living in America. And he took the whole day to sort of introduce me to not only, life on campus and in the winemaking, viticulture and enology section, but also just, being an Australian in the US. And it was incredible. I mean, lots of differences in the way the university works. I remember one of my first days on campus walking around going, why are those girls wearing all the same outfit? They're spewing. And then I realised it was rush for, they call it, I think, for the sororities. And they were all wearing, anyways. So, mind-bending.
You're like, what are the chances?
Watching cheerleaders, learning American football rules. But I think I did think that culturally we would be a lot more similar than what we are because we speak English and because I'd been, you see American TV shows. But, I mean, back then legit, most people had never heard an Australian accent apart from, Crocodile Hunter and just couldn't get their mind around Australia as a place. So, yeah, I mean, it was great. It was awesome. Awesome.
Did you feel special, though? Was it nice?
I may have used my accent to my advantage in my younger days.
Good for you. I'm glad to hear it. I would expect nothing less. So tell me now, 2004, you return home. McLaren Vale has had exponential growth and change. Tell me a little bit about kind of from 2004, what are the major changes that you've seen of the region?
Oh, wow. Grenache has gone from being the baby maligned cousin to, being at the forefront. Grenache was the cheapest grape you could buy back in the day, and now it's the most expensive in general. On average in the region. The explosion of cellar doors and the wine tourism experience. I think just the coming of age of our region as a tourism destination, which followed with or was combined with the explosion in incredible restaurants and the realisation that our beaches are world class. I think that's been a real change. That whole bellies up to the bar type of tasting is, now completely changed to a real tourism experience. The alternative varieties has been a big sort of growth space. I think, based off the hunt for maybe a white that we could really hang our hat on, we kind of hadn't really got, a white variety that really worked incredibly well in our region. So that's been pretty exciting. And I think also sustainability-wise, the implementation of our Wollonga Basin Water Company, in which we now recycle all the town water instead of it going out to the sea. It's got a number of very big wins in the region. So that sort of focus on organic / biodynamic / sustainability has, gone through the roof. The care for old vines, stopped ploughing all the time. My grandpa was, his last jobs that he did on the property was just, we were like, okay, we just need to let him plough because that's what he does. The mid-rows, that doesn't really happen anymore at all. People staying, I suppose, instead of leaving. Generational change in some of the other wineries. So much. The great thing about this region is that there's always been some pretty interesting characters who are super blue sky type crazy thinkers, the likes of Mark Lloyd from Coriol and his focus on Italian varieties before anyone else did, or other varieties before anyone else did. You've got Chester Osborne, who builds crazy cubes. You've got and would have done. If his family had let him, he would have done even more crazier things. And people like Greg Trott, who iconic for their irreverence and so it kind of is a bit of a breeding ground for just a little bit of irreverence, a little I don't know. It's just it's a pretty cool place to live.
It's a very cool place to live. And you summed that up so well. And I did throw you for a bit of a loop, so I apologise. Sum up the last 40 years. No, but you did that beautifully because it has changed. And when I talk about McLaren Vale, I have to kind of rein myself in because I am so excited by what I see. But I feel that there's been a long time of championing McLaren Vale, but it's just like finally everybody gets it. But what an incredible place. And I want to talk a little bit about how these Spanish and Italian varieties kind of caught your eye and why you decided to go down that route. And obviously you've been a huge champion of the Australian alternate varieties with the wine show. First of all, do you like the word alternate varieties? have you come up with something better?
No, I haven't. If anyone can come up with something better, I'd be happy to hear it.
Me too. I don't know what it is, but it just doesn't feel relevant anymore. But I can't find another word either. So
it's like, the other one I don't like, so this is a bit of a pet hate as well, but, natural wine, because all other wine is unnatural. Anyways, I don't like that one either. But, no, I can't come up with anything. It's such a vast group, isn't it? Like it's such a vast grouping. It feels like, saying black or white. But anyways.
Yes, indeed. So tell me a little bit about, why the decision? You have definitely pushed the boat out because there's many varieties that you're working with now that, first of all, struggle for people to be able to say them, let alone figure out what they look and taste like. I've always found the scope of, Indigenous varieties from all over the world fascinating. And so it draws me in automatically. But tell me a little bit about, where that started. And like you said, you still make a lot of the classic varieties as well. So when did all of that take seed?
It all took seed really with Mark Lloyd and Chester. They went on a bit of a trip around Italy and sort of started seeing, what could be the next things. Mark had already planted Sangiovese and Sangiovese and had it for a long time, really, for that variety. And he'd been looking at other bits and pieces. And we were growers for Coriol at the time and are still growers for Darrenberg. And Mark they'd sort of come up with Fiano as a really great opportunity, and Sagrantino at the time was the other sort of, was the red sort of variety that they were interested in. And they'd run out of land to plant on, and we had a little bit of space, and so we said, at the time also you're talking about the worry with climate change, you the worry with drought, so you're looking at varieties that might have a resilience to water and not needing as much water, and of course disease tolerant. Not that McLaren Vale is a particularly high pressure disease region, but you're thinking of those sorts of things that won't use as much water. And you're thinking of, okay, we really need a hero white for this region, because we go fishing and then we come home and we don't always need to drink Shiraz with it. So, and then also thinking of, what's been the problem, I guess, with some of the other white varieties that we've had planted in the region. And 90% of that has been the fact that the acid drops out really fast because we're just too warm. So, Chardonnay ripens too early and your acid drops out. So you have to, balance it by adding acid, and, you get a tropical sort of, not, just a boring wine, I suppose. There are some pockets of good Chardonnay in the region, but, it's pretty few and far between. So when he started mentioning Fiano, then we started trying to, I bought as many as I could find, which wasn't very many in Australia, and thought this could be interesting because it does have high natural acidity. So we planted it and just been really happy with. It's just sort of ticked all of those boxes that, we were looking for. And whether that was luck or great planning, I'll handball it to Mark Lloyd and say it was great planning on his behalf. But it's been that one variety that's really been in the pocket for ticking all of those boxes. And so that sort of then started a bit of a journey. Then we started looking at other sort of southern Italian varietals, Vermentino. We now have some Falanghina, which is from the same region as Fiano. And then Mencía, so the Spanish side of things, Tempranillo sort of, was pretty exciting as a variety. Taranga was getting, brought something else to the vineyard, with its beautiful florals and, very, very lifted and quite a different sort of style, which was really attractive. And then I'd just been drinking some Mencía from Spain and really enjoying it, and must have been putting it on my socials or something. And then Nick Dry, who was in charge of the Yalumba nursery at that time, rang me up and said, we've just got Mencía out of quarantine. Have you guys got anywhere to plant it? We don't have any space. And I was like, yeah, sure. Okay, we'll have a crack. So that's how Mencía came along as well.
So cool. I mean, I hope that a big part of, you going forward in this was that you got a bit of purchasing power to buy wines from all over the world. Was that something to do a bit of research?
Oh yeah, and travel to them as well, and also hats off to the Chalmers family as well. I mean, who really saw that the climate change piece probably was what was driving them in the first place. But developing the relationship with the nursery in Italy, and bringing over all the Italian varietals when they probably didn't need to, they were still selling a shitload of Chardonnay and Shiraz cuttings. Incredible foresight on their behalf. And we were really lucky to be able to access it. Mark Lloyd could have had the idea, but if we couldn't access any of the vine material, and how long it takes to get things through quarantine. So it sort of worked out to be a perfect confluence of happenings.
I know, it's like we need to rewrite that saying of the 7 degrees separation from the Chalmers. It's like the 4 degrees separation from the Chalmers family and what they've done.
Only 2.
Yeah, exactly.
I would have married the girls by now if I could.
I know. Damn it. But they're, those varieties, I think what's so cool is that now with a little bit of time, for me, I always look at those, and have been lucky enough as a som to taste a lot of these wines from lots of different vineyards. I have an understanding of what they look like in, up in the northeast of Italy or wherever it may be. But then to see them now on this Australian scope and see how settled and confident the winemaking is, and to see, that wonderful kind of salty saline breeze that we get in McLaren Vale, and see, where they're situated, and just to see what they look like here is just so exciting, because we're not emulating, trying to recreate anything else anymore. We're making that varietal where it makes sense for us in our landscape. And it couldn't be more exciting what's happening with the alternates right now. I mean, there is so much scope, there is so much deliciousness, and there's just something for every day of the week.
Yeah, I mean, it's been incredible journey. I mean, one of my most amazing sort of sensorial experiences was when I went over to Campania and was in a small family vineyard, Fiano, on Harvest Day, one of their harvest days, and there I am in Avellino in the vineyard, and they're drying their hazelnuts. They've got the tomatoes are all ripe. They've got their eggplants are all there. You're walking through the vineyard, and Nonna from next door and Nono from next door are doing sort of selective hand harvesting with a ciggy hanging out of his mouth, and so you've got the smell of the sort of whatever that old school smoke is, plus you're in the mid-row of the vineyard is wild oregano and wild mint, and so every step is like releasing, and then you're tasting the berries from the off the vine, and it's just one of those. And then at the end of the row there's a baba cake that's 99% limoncello and a little bit of flour and eggs, and just a sensory overload, and just absolutely loved being able to spend time over there, and then see in their landscape, much higher rainfall, up higher, quite different, or very, very vigorous soils, all volcanic sort of soils, and then how it translates into our landscape, and still seeing that there's a thread that ties us together, but it's not like it doesn't have to be the same. So, yeah.
Oh my gosh, that sounds like a slice of heaven, and I'm glad that you've managed to capture that moment for us, because I'm sure it will stay with you forever. But what I think the Australian alternate varieties excites me the most is just this way that, with not being able to, for a lot of people consumers that don't drink these types of wines, finding language and shape in their palate for something they aren't sure what it's supposed to look like, and just leaning into savory qualities with whites and salinity and texture and different, with the reds, different shapes and shades. And, it's just being able to kind of fill in all this color and pattern in our wine world that perhaps wasn't there before. And I just think, when someone says, have a Sagrantino, have a Monty, have a Falangia, and people haven't tried it before, it's like, great. You're not supposed to know what you're trying. Just experience it for what it is and let it kind of sit with you for a little bit. And that's what I think it's so intriguing and exciting.
Yeah, I mean, that's been super exciting with the Alternative Varieties Wine Show as well because, when you're judging there, not only is Stefano feeding you, so that makes you very happy, but no one can profess to be the world's greatest expert on Falangina, in your judging panel, and so you're all there learning so much, seeing how different people are expressing it, seeing what different regions are doing, what different producers are doing, as the vines age as well, and what's changing as the vines age. So what an incredible educational experience that is as well. So yeah. And it's the same. So we're almost in the same space as the consumer in some ways, but, we do have a lot more, I suppose, us wine nerds have a lot more frame of reference for where things have been and where they're going to.
Yeah. And isn't that a wonderful space to be going alongside the consumer? It's so important for us to all stay relevant and to stay connected, is to be with them going, well, if you can't say it, how are we going to help them? How are we going to get them confident enough? And you can see in people's eyes, as soon as they learn how to say it a little bit and they've seen, I've tried it once before, they will go back and be like, I've tried that and I really liked it last time. I want to try it again. And the confidence, it's such a beautiful thing to see. But I do want to ask you a little bit about community, because you have been a champion of gender equality and diversity. You're on all the community panels and all the boards. And that wasn't very articulate of me, but tell me about what it means to be connected to the greater wine industry and why it's so important to you to represent on these boards.
It's important to me because I don't think you can whinge about anything and then not be part of the solution. That's probably just a core, belief. But and also, my family has always contributed to their industry or region, and so maybe there's some sort of DNA that makes it happen as well. But I also think, it's important when you're a small winery in your own small spot and it's all our own vineyard. So it's not like I'm looking at heaps of other people's vineyards, and that you look further than your own backyard as to what's happening, and you try and avoid cellar palate, I suppose, is one of the more. One of the things, but it's not just that. It's understanding what's actually happening in the greater wine industry, the community out there, what's happening. For the Women in Wine piece, it was just a rage, really, that came up around we're losing. There was 50 going through university, and we were coming out the other side, and there was 10%, women in wine and viticulture. So I just couldn't. That was just such a loss, a brain drain, a loss, and it wasn't right. So, that's, I suppose, my reason for being on a number of boards. I'm happy for other people to be there as well.
Well, it does. It takes up time. It takes you away from, your day job of what you're meant to be doing. And that's why I asked, because I think it is so important that we have these experiences. Maybe you don't do it for your whole life, but to go in and, like you said, be part of the solution or putting forth ideas, helping change the landscape for the next generation, so important. And I think, the work that you do now, you might meet a young girl coming up in this industry who has it made, and you think, God, you didn't go through the struggles, but isn't that the whole reason we do these things?
Mate, yeah, exactly. 100%. If that happened, I would be absolutely thrilled. I mean,
Totally.
there just wasn't enough diverse voices around the decision making tables. I just didn't, and so they were all, there was a lot of decisions being made that everyone was patting each other on the back about because they'd all come from the same sort of lived experience and the same background and thought that that was a great idea. And, it was never a great idea. And had there been, a bit more diversity around the table in the decision making room, maybe a better decision would have, frothed up from there. So I just strongly believe that, I'm happy to handball to and raise up as many women as I possibly can, or, marginalised, anyone who, wants to have a voice and invest a bit of time into it.
Totally, and just contribute. And I mean, you've been so wonderful at that. And I just think it's important to say thank you for the work that you've done, because you have made it easier for many people following in your footsteps. But also, I'm sure it hasn't necessarily been easy and as enjoyable of an experience to sometimes have those hard conversations. But you've done it beautifully. And from many women out there, I thank you for the work that you've done. When you look back at your whole career, do you have a proudest career moment? Within the family business, I think, opening a cellar door, the renovation of our cellar door, I think probably, was a really big step, and was the decision, it was on the cusp basically, and then COVID happened, and the decision was, we decided we would still go ahead and because we wanted a good news story after COVID. Which was quite brave now looking back, given. But, we actually went to my great-grandmother's diaries, and she had written about the Spanish flu, and her brother died. He made it through the war, and then unfortunately died of Spanish flu as he was about to come back to Australia. So, but just the fact that her diaries, told the story, sort of tracked the sort of spread, I suppose, locally, and, the trains that got shut down, and, all of those sorts of things. And then also the finding out much after he died, that her brother wasn't coming home. But then how, it then got back to day, it was, what washing she did, and where they went out and what dance they went to and stuff like that. And so I kind of took some comfort from reading that, and we made the decision to still go ahead. So I'm proud of that. I'm just proud that we've been able to have our family members and work so well together, and we wouldn't have been able to grow the way we have. We bought a winery a couple of years ago as well, after being, and now we're a contract processor and building a community of, really great wineries that are working with us, with Oliver's Taranga as one of the customers as well. So I'm super proud of that. But I think I'm pretty proud of, I got to be a mentor for Nadia Wallington. She's based in Orange. Amazing human.
Yes, amazing. And I mean, I will not take pretty much 1 ounce of credit, but I think she has said to me that having me as a sounding board gave her the confidence to do, have a family and do what she's done now, with her own brand. And that makes me feel really amazing. I also was part of sort of making a bit of change in some of the wine show judging, having more women involved and those sorts of things. And I've had people reach out to me recently and tell them that really made a difference for them as well. I'm in a privileged position because no one can sack me here. So, but I can throw myself to the wolves a bit easier than other people can when they're working for other businesses. But yeah, so being able to be a small part of making a difference for other women has been amazing. Yeah,
well, I think amazing. It's a reminder to everyone out there that if somebody has, made a difference in your life, made something slightly easier for you, opened a door, to reach out and say thank you, because it's the least you can do, but also you don't know how much it might mean to somebody else. And I think sometimes we get a bit a bit cool and you're like, oh, I don't want to sound like a numpty, so you don't sometimes say those things. And I think it's so important because, like you said, it might really be something that really means something to somebody. And all of those mentoring components that you've done, like you said, even being a soundboard and something as simple as that, it sounds simple enough, but everyone's very busy in their lives. And when you know that you can always just pick up the phone or say, can I have 5 minutes of your time to run something by you? That means the world to people, because it just might be the difference between, like you said, going ahead or taking a step back, or not, like you said, jumping off the cliff or whatever it may be. So, you've had an incredible career. I can't even imagine where it's going to go to and what you're going to do. Such a huge fan over here. I would like to know, if you can only drink 3 drinks for the rest of your life, what are they going to be?
Yep. Okay, so it's going to be 96 Ceylon. That was I managed.
I almost snorted my coffee out my nose. I'm with you on that.
So someone else is paying, obviously. And I mean, one of my most, what I thought was one of the most iconic Australian wines is the Penfolds Bin 60A, the 1962. I've had that a couple of times, and absolutely ethereal. And then I'm bending your rules a lot here, but just wherever I am traveling wise, in wine regions, whatever's in that region that they drink, I'm going to drink that.
That is such a good answer, and it's totally not bending the rules, because what grows together goes together. It's a moment and it's something from that place, and it makes complete sense to me. No one's ever said that, and I think it's genius.
Always have to break the rules, me. Sorry, I apologise.
Oh no, I absolutely love it. I love it. From now I'm going to think about you. What was that thing you said? Something about throwing it to the wolves. I'm just going to think of Corrina Wright. It has been such a joy. I could sit here all day chatting to you. Thank you so much for spending some time with me. I'm just such a huge fan, total girl crush, and just thank you for everything that you do.
Well, same here. Thank you. Thanks for taking the time to have a chat. Loved it.
Cheers to you.
Cheers.
This is Over a Glass. I'm Shanteh Wale. Stay tuned for more stories from the world of wine and drinks. Listen in every Thursday on your podcast app. Follow us on Instagram at overaglasspod and contact us at overaglass@deepintheweeds.com.au.